Hey everyone, so I'm going to do a video on long division and the remainder theorem. So my first example, I want to divide m minus 8 by m squared minus 7m minus 11. So the three steps for long division are divide, multiply, and subtract. The first thing you do is divide the first term by the first term. So that becomes m squared over m. You end up getting m. That's part of your quotient, so you put that up there. Now you'll multiply by what's on the outside. That distributes in. Whatever you get there goes directly underneath this piece here. So I'm going to distribute this in to get m squared minus 8m. Now I'm going to subtract. When you subtract, you change both signs because remember you're distributing a negative in here. So let me just do this over so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So when you distribute that negative into here, this becomes a negative m squared, and that becomes a positive 8m. This cancels what you want always to happen. You'll get a positive m, drop down the negative 11. Okay, so now I'm going to divide again. Divide the first term by the first term. So m divided by m. That will get 1. And you'll put that positive 1 up here. Okay, so then I'm going to multiply by what's on the outside, and that's going to get me m minus 8. And now I will subtract. When I subtract, I distribute it in. I change this sign to negative, and that's positive. When that happens, this cancels. I end up getting a remainder of negative 3. What you do with your remainder is you add it onto your quotient. So my final answer will be m plus 1 minus 3, and that remainder will be written with m minus 8 on the bottom. And that's your final answer. Now, what's cool is this has to do with the remainder theorem, and especially because we divided by something that was linear. Something linear meaning that the power is to the first. Now, if you remember, we got a remainder of negative 3 when we did that problem out. So the remainder theorem states if you divide a polynomial, so if I divide this by m minus 8, so the long way they say it, if you divide a polynomial f of x by x minus c. X minus c in this case is m minus 8. Your remainder r is equal to f of c. In this case, f of x is equal to m squared minus 7m minus 11. That's the first part of the theorem. It says when we divide a polynomial f of x, so I'm dividing f of x by x minus c. So in this case, we're dividing by m minus 8. Your remainder will equal f of the opposite. If you notice this is x minus c, this is positive c. So it's the opposite sign. So it'll equal f of 8. So if you find f of 8, you will find the remainder as well. So that means that take your polynomial and plug in 8 wherever you see m. So 8 and minus 11. When you plug this in your calculator, you do get negative 3. So that is your remainder. So if you remember from the last slide, I had negative 3 as a remainder. This is a way to check yourself. The remainder theorem states if you divide by something that is linear, if you divide by something that's linear, x minus c, and you plug that opposite number into that polynomial that you started with, you end up getting the remainder. Now what's also cool about the remainder theorem is that when you plug in 8 into here, you end up getting negative 3. That is your remainder, but it's also your y value on your graph. So if you look at this graph here, at positive 8, okay, it's because it's positive 8 because you're setting this equal to 0. At positive 8, if you look at the graph, so here we go, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8's right here. If I go down, my point here is 8, comma, negative 3. And there you go again. Your remainder is your y value on your graph. And this is a different type of, it's still long division. You have to use long division with this one because you're dividing by a quadratic. And in this one, you're going to need to pay attention to what happens with all the powers. So I'm going to set up my long division. So I have 3x squared minus 2. I'm going to put 3x to the 4th plus 9x cubed minus 5x squared minus 6x plus 2. Alright, so again, your three steps are to divide, multiply, and subtract. So I'm going to divide the first term by the first term. So 3x to the fourth divided by 3x squared. That ends up giving you x squared. That goes on the top because it's a part of your quotient. You divided, so now we're going to multiply by the outside. So we get 3x squared minus 2. So I'm going to multiply that in, and when I do that, I get 3x to the fourth minus 2x squared. And this is what I really want you guys to keep in mind when you do these types of problems. If you notice, you have a power of 4, and a power of 2. So I'm going to write 3x to the fourth here, but I'm going to put negative 2x squared here because it's directly underneath the squared. So I put my like terms underneath each other. I'm going to subtract by changing both signs. These cancel. So now I'm going to bring down this 9x cubed because he didn't combine with anything. But I'm going to combine negative 5 and positive 2 to become negative 3x squared. And then bring down what's left over, minus 6x plus 2. Okay, so now I'm going to start all over again. Take the first term divided by the first term. So 9x cubed divided by 3x squared. When you do that, you end up getting 3x. That's a part of your quotient, so I will put it up top. I just divided, so I will multiply now by the outside. 3x squared minus 2. That goes in. I end up getting 9x cubed minus 6x. Now again, look at what you just got. You got a power of 3 and a power of 1. I'm just going to put that 9x cubed here, but I'm going to put that negative 6x directly underneath the x to the first power, which is also negative 6x. I'm going to now subtract by changing both signs. These cancel. I'm going to bring down the negative 3x squared because he has no like terms to combine with, but the negative 6x and the positive 6x actually cancel as well, and you bring down that positive 2. Almost done. I'm going to now divide negative 3x squared, my first term, by my first term. So they both happen to be negative 3x squared. Well, just 3x squared, I guess. So I'm going to divide negative 3x squared divided by 3x. That gets you a negative 1. I'll put that negative 1 at the top. So it'll be negative 1 here. And I'm going to multiply that negative 1 by 3x squared minus 2. When I do that, I end up getting negative 3x squared plus 2. Again, I'm going to subtract, so change both signs. Those both cancel, so you have a remainder of 0. And another side note here, when you have a remainder of 0, that tells me that my divisor was a factor of my dividend. So this goes in evenly to what you divided. And this is my quotient here, my answer right there.